Bombshell tonight in the investigation of the death of a young man, Nolan Wells. Death threats are flying. One actually says there's going to be blood, so much blood. Another death threat says, don't go outside. How can anybody do their jobs when they're getting death threats? Not only that, we understand this case is headed to a grand jury. We also learned tonight that the state's autopsy is complete, but is being kept secret. Isn't an autopsy a public document? Why is it being kept hidden from us, the public? What is in that autopsy, the first autopsy of Nolan Wells? Good evening. I'm Nancy Grace. This is Crime Stories. I want to thank you for being with us.
The young lady, Katie, that he was hanging out with, I saw a text message from her alluding to the fact that she never saw him get on that boat at all. They could have been saying, don't die, or is it dead, referring to the bilge pump. Somebody would have seen something if there was a dramatic commotion like this occurring on that boat.
I hope Nolan Wells died by accident. I'm not shutting down our Crime Stories investigation until I know.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the f*** up! What'd you say?
You know, if that sound is real, there's no getting away from that. And all this business about there's no connection, well, I listened to a good 40 seconds of SETO, S-E-A, second word T-O-W, on hold, listened to their music. There was plenty good connection, but before I can even get to the death threats of blood, so much blood everywhere, and don't step outside, and more, before I can even get to the grand jury, before I can get to the autopsy that's being kept hidden from us, I want you to meet someone very important, critical to this investigation. Her name, Janetta Brantley. Miss Brantley is the audio engineer who enhanced the 911 call, the SETO call, in the Nolan Wells case. So everybody claiming some ding-dong on YouTube did it, or somebody on Insta or TikTok did it, no. She did it. I've spoken to her. I've read her statement. I want you to judge her credibility. Credibility is normally the sole province of a jury, and tonight you serve in that function. Miss Brantley, I'm sure that you're getting all sorts of abuse, threats, and so forth. It's a cacophony that seemingly won't cease. That said, thank you for being with us tonight. Explain to me where you got the audio, how you got the audio, and what, if anything, you did to enhance the audio.
First and foremost, I basically downloaded it off of YouTube from WLOX News's YouTube site. And when I downloaded it, I ripped it off of YouTube. That's the terminology that we use when we take something off of YouTube. But when I ripped it off of YouTube, Pause. And I pulled it in.
Pause, please. Objection. Miss Brantley, isn't it true
Yes.
that the audio you got was taken directly by XLO from MDMR, correct? The Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Okay, please continue, Miss Brantley.
So when I downloaded it from YouTube, I pulled it into my DAW, which is Logic Pro X. That's my DAW of choice. And when I first listened to it, I realized that it was like a dual mono recording, which most, most phone services or operators utilize when they're recording conversations.
A Jackson County deputy told the press no foul play was suspected. That was July 6th. By July 21st, Nancy Grace had convened a 1-hour special. A grand jury was reportedly empaneled, and the Department of Justice was fielding calls. That is a shift in momentum that does not happen by accident. It happens when someone with a national platform decides a case is not going to disappear. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to Project Cold Case. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. The initial official narrative was straightforward: a tragic 4th of July drowning. Nolan Wells, 18 years old, rowed out to Horn Island on a boat called the Triton. The boat had bilge pump trouble. His friends say they left without him because he wanted to stay behind and talk to a girl named Katie. He was found dead 2 days later. The sheriff said no crime was committed.
Found death investigator, professor of forensics, Jacksonville State University, with a premier criminal pro department and building, author of Blood Beneath My Feet, star of a hit series, Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan, and it goes on. Significant, over 10,000 death scenes under his belt. Joe Scott, follow up. I'm not arguing in Burkhart's. Let's learn, if we can, from what he's saying. Jump.
Yeah, so whatever has been the causal factors here has got to marry up with what they were seeing at the scene, and perhaps the audio does fall into this, these statements. And I think that probably from a medical legal perspective, that is the coroner and the medical examiner are going to want to be able to fully appreciate what is being said here from a timeline. This is absent the police's investigation. They're going to try to rule in or rule out what they're seeing presenting on Nolan's remains when they finally did receive them at the state medical examiner's office and that examination began. And this is going to be critical and key, because the causal effects here are going to be critical. We go back to these changes that the second autopsy referred to on the back of the head. Now, the doctor was not able to, at that point in time, even though he did do a thorough, what's referred to as a layered dissection here, he could not establish the causal effects here because the injury or the insult that you see there, this presentation, is compromised by decomposition. So what did the state medical examiner see? My problem is here, Nancy, how was the body treated before or after the first autopsy and the body is transported up to D.C.? I have questions about this because they're talking about to the degree with which the body was decomposed. The doctor up in D.C. is seeing significant decomposition. We don't know what they saw in Mississippi, but I do know that you're only talking about and I'm ballparking here, please give me some grace, maybe 48 hours tops. Before the medical legal authorities have seen the body. So how far degraded is the body to compromise any of this? And this evidence is going to have to be borne out, not just with the physical findings that you see with the unaided eye, but also whatever's going on toxicologically.
I want you to take a careful look at this video we have obtained. Let's see it. Look how tightly everyone is packed in. There were hundreds of people out on Horn Island on July the 4th. What, nobody saw what happened to Nolan Wells? They all just left with him standing there stranded, waving his arms like Gilligan? That did not happen. Now that you're seeing this, what is an innocent explanation? I'm trying to figure that out. Joining me, and I'll circle back to you, Joe Scott, because I got a lot of questions regarding the way he could have died innocently and been left behind, and that sound being true. The sound that Janetta Brantley enhanced. Is there any innocent explanation? Is there a way? As my favorite judge often said, Luther Alverson, it is your duty to make all witnesses speak the truth and impugn perjury to no one. Is there a way that can be done? I don't know that it can. It seems to me that someone is lying. But who? Joining me now, Teslin Figaro, social justice, political commentator, host of the Teslin-Figaro podcast. Ms. Figaro, thank you for being with us. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, that's what the family is saying. They don't believe he died by accident. That's the point. That's the reason why Nolan Wells' mom is saying, I don't believe this. I don't believe he died by accident before we had the audio. The audio simply confirms that there are additional questions that needs to be asked. It wasn't just one thing they said in the audio. They said Nolan repeatedly in the audio. They said check his chest in the audio. They said, is he dead in the audio? And also notice this, Nancy. Did you notice that the operator also said, is anybody breathing? Who says that? What operator says who all is breathing on the boat? So is this all the audio, Nancy? Is there more audio? That's my question.
I want to look specifically, Teslin, at what was said. At one point, we think, you killed him? He's already dead. He's already dead? Is he dead? Yeah. Nolan, OMG, wake up. And as Janetta stated, then she hears a completely different name, Bart. Now, we also hear, and I'm very curious, the phrase, no. Teslin-Figaro, was that a nickname of Nolan Wells?
I cannot confirm if that's a nickname of his or not. But what I do know is we heard Nolan. What I do know is we heard check his chest. What I do know is that we said, is he dead? What we do know is we heard screams. There's folks out there suggesting that perhaps they were talking to a seagull or perhaps talking to some random bird that was flying around that's called no. There were folks out there that suggested, well, maybe they were talking about the boat.
Except it was never closed. And the reason it is not closed is because the evidence does not align with a simple drowning. The independent autopsy commissioned by the family could not determine cause or manner of death, a finding that effectively contradicted the local coroner's preliminary assessment. The state autopsy has been completed, but will be withheld until a grand jury reviews it. A grand jury that is now convening. That sequences itself an admission that the initial dismissal was premature at best. That is a direct contradiction. One party says he chose to stay. There is a gap of nearly 3 hours where the official narrative relies entirely on the word of a group of friends whose accounts have already proven inconsistent on key details. Now, let's talk about Katie. The friends told Nolan's mother that he stayed with a girl named Katie. At first, they claimed they didn't know her, had never seen her before. Then it emerged they had been texting with her. Her sister gave a different account, telling the Daily Mail that Katie believed Nolan was getting ready to board the boat with his friends, and that the friends wouldn't have left without him.
Investigated. We want the truth behind that audio. I want to know. And I want everybody on that boat polygraphed. We want answers. If you know, or you think you know anything about this case, dial 228-769-3063. Tonight, we honor Canine Echo, protected while serving the Sartell PD, Minnesota, because a group called Vested Interest in Canines created a bullet and stab-proof protected vest and protected Echo. These things aren't standard. They're over $1,000 each. And I've seen many canines die on crime scenes. Protect those canines who protect us. We remember an American hero, Officer Brian Huff, Detroit PD, shot in the line of duty after 12 years, leaving behind his wife, Melissa, and their son, Blair. American hero, Officer Brian Huff. Thank you to our guests for being with us tonight, but especially to you for joining us in our search for the truth. However it may pan out, if it brings down the courthouse walls, so be it. We want the truth about Nolan Wells. Nancy Grace signing off. I'll see you tomorrow night, and until then, good night, friend. Hi guys, please join us on our mission to find missing people, especially children, to solve unsolved homicides. And if you're on the go, please join us on your favorite podcast app where you can get all our content, where we, in our way, seek justice.